And we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. So, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So, today we're just going to be following up with the stream of yesterday, the conversations that I was supposed to have yesterday, but I couldn't have them. So, I'm going to be looking at Piers Morgan, getting a taste of his own medicine. Piers Morgan finding out what it means to be on the Piers Morgan show. We know how Piers Morgan acts when he's on the show, where he constantly interrupts his guests, he constantly rage baits them, he constantly puts words in their mouth, not allowing them to, say out their piece without interjecting. He got that treatment when he went to Jubilee when he had a debate with on Jubilee, and one of the co-participants in that debate gave him exactly, and he was quite pissed because it doesn't make sense for you to be interrupting your someone you're debating with about. That's the Pierce Morgan treatment, and he got that. I'm also going to be looking at Peter Hitchens revealing his ignorance about addiction. I call him Hitchens the less, not as great as his brother Christopher Hitchens. And we're going to be looking at the US going full white nationalist on Europe, and finally, why Mehdi Hassan is an absolute beast when it comes to debates. I mean, he wrecked a quote unquote Christian theologian when it came to the issue of slavery. So let's dive right in, starting with Piers Morgan. Yeah.
How are you? Good to see you. What's your name?
And mind you, this conversation they're having is about stoicism, right? This macho kind of repressing your feelings kind of thing. So Piers Morgan is essentially saying people are becoming too soft. Therapy, therapy, therapy. People need to build their more mental fortitude to be able to deal with the realities of life and so on and so forth. But this kid, gives reasons why Piers Morgan's view uh, isn't that productive.
Parker. Parker, I'm Piers.
I've been on your show, bro.
Yes, I thought I recognized you. Everything's a
life.
calamity. Everything's a problem. Has to be overanalyzed,
No one said
over-dissected, over-therapized. And I just think you've all got to be given the mental tools to deal with ordinary life. Ordinary life.
We already have them.
Ordinary
I
life.
actually have
Let
gone
me
to
tell
therapy
you.
to do that.
Ordinary
Have
life.
you?
Yeah, but without going to therapy all the time.
Wait, what's your solution? What's your solution?
People, I think at school and colleges, we need to reinforce, this comes back to masculinity with men. We need to reinforce the mental tools required for life.
Such as?
Well, I can tell you when I can.
Good. So Piers Morgan is saying, in order for us to be able to deal with the realities of life, we need to reinforce the mental tools needed to go through life. Good, good. And then the kid asks him, so how exactly are you going to do that? What exactly should you do to reinforce those mental tools? And his answer is weirdly interesting because he makes it about kids. It takes it to a direction about participation trophies, and that's what is making people not have the mental fortitude to be able to deal with the challenges of life, which is not correct.
chart the absolute descent of this in the wrong way. And I think it began in America, when you started giving kids participation prizes for coming last at sport. Absolute shambles. I mean, who ever thought of that?
How does this have to do with actually like
I'm ex-
men making their emotions better
I'm
off?
explaining.
It's participation
I'm
trophies.
explaining.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
explaining.
And the comeback from Parker makes a lot of sense. How does giving kids participation trophies, how does it translate into them not being well-formed individuals later on in life? I mean, there are so many things that are told to kids that are literally false. For example, quote and unquote, Santa Claus is going to bring you some gifts in the chimney, or the tooth fairy. There are so many things that kids were told that are not true. But does that mean that those kids grow up to become useless? They're kids, for crying out loud. If you are an adult, if you are a grown man, and the reason why you cannot have mental fortitude is because when you were a kid, everyone was given a participation trophy. there's something fundamentally wrong with you. You haven't properly developed as an individual. And it has nothing to do with the fact that participation trophies were given to kids. Something else is entirely at play here. And this is the example that Piers Morgan gives on how to solve the problem of mental fortitude, of people not having enough mental fortitude. Parker would go on to ask him, so what is your solution? He's stating a problem, he isn't stating a solution.
Because if young people are conditioned to think that if you come last at something, you get a prize, it is the worst possible preparation for the real
So
world.
what's the actual
Because
solution?
Parker,
You're just telling a
Parker,
problem again.
do you
Problem,
want- do
problem,
you-
problem. What's the solution?
Parker, if I could finish my sentence.
Start with the
The
solution.
solution is you to stop talking for a moment, right?
How about you actually
Right.
provide a solution? All you've done is
Parker.
bring about problems.
Do you know what the alternative is? The alternative to this framework is what's happening in Asia, the hyper competitive nature in Asia that is almost guaranteed to destroy Asian societies like South Korea and Japan. I mean, they are having issues with suicide. The suicide rate in Japan and in South Korea, especially after exams, where people are under so much pressure to be the absolute best. People are not having, they're not living, they're just living to prove that they are the best. And when they don't measure up to what society expects of them, some of these kids kill themselves. I mean, there are research to show that after the release of certain results, high school results in South Korea and Japan, the murder rate spikes up because people's self-worth have been tied to, we have to be the best, we have to come out at the top, we have to be the best, we have to come out at the top. The population of South Korea, the population of Japan is literally going down. People are not having babies because of this hyper competitive environment. That's what Piers Morgan wants for people in the West, not a society that's able to take on, different people at different strata. Yeah, some people are going to be exceptional, some are going to be in the mid range, some are going to be at the bottom. So what? That's life. If you live in a civilized society should make room and accommodation for all of those categories of people and not think that someone is worth less because they are not the absolute best. Not everyone is going to be the absolute best, and this hyper competitive environment doesn't do well for the future of a society. Japan is literally going to go out of existence because, first of all, they're not having enough kids, and they're so xenophobic, they're not even allowing immigration. Immigration is one of the things that's keeping the West. Japan isn't allowing any of that. They are stressed out. They live for work. There is no work-life balance. That's the kind of society you want. That's the kind of mental fortitude you want, to just be a cog in the wheel of the capitalist machine. It makes no sense.
Parker, I've just given you a solution. I want
That's
more.
not a solution. That's a
Yes,
problem.
you stop participation prizes. You condition kids to deal with the real world when they become adults.
You're
Otherwise,
fixed
when
for
they
men
get
not
So you condition kids to deal with the real world when they become adults. But when you tell kids that Santa Claus is real, or when you tell kids that the tooth fairy is real, and some other things that kids are told, that's going to impact on how they develop later on in life. The kids, that's man. Well, as Parker said, you are restating a problem. You haven't offered it. You haven't preferred any solution.
having the ability
Stop
to express their emotions
talking,
in a positive
Parker.
way is
Parker!
literally
God,
participation
no wonder
trophies not
Jordan
being
Peters'
there.
advantage is so annoying. Look,
Have you been on your own show?
Parker.
You interrupted
Exactly.
me the whole time, and now you're just getting.
Piers Morgan is saying, stop talking, stop talking, stop interrupting me. Have you been on your own show? Have you seen how you act on your show? This is worse than what this is less bad than what Piers Morgan does on his show. When he has his guests on, he just rage baits them. He doesn't allow them finish their sentences before he cuts in, and so this kid is giving him a taste of his own medicine.
The same thing.
well, because you
You're
never
just
stop talking.
Don't,
Like
don't
a
be mad.
robot.
Don't be mad.
Parker.
Are you mad?
No, I'm trying to finish my sentence.
It's okay.
Parker, come on, calm down. You're shaking.
I'm totally
Hey,
calm.
Parker.
I'm not shaking at all.
Parker, you're shaking. Here's my-
I'm
It's
not
not-
shaking. Why do you
here's
have to
my-
act like I'm?
here's my
Why do you have
point.
to say something delusional to
Here's-
try to deflect away from the fact
Let
that
me explain.
you haven't addressed anything meaningful
Jesus
here?
Christ, Parker.
This is what it
I'm sorry, bro.
feels
I love
like.
rage
This
bait.
is what it feels like to be on a Piers Morgan show. Annoying, right? This is annoying. That's exactly what Piers Morgan does.
You.
There's, I don't mind. I love it. As you know, I literally spend my entire life debating. It's no problem.
You're
I do
actually
this-
rage baiting. You
but
don't debate.
It's fine.
Exactly. Piers Morgan doesn't debate, and Piers Morgan is Piers Morgan is a smart person. I know because I've seen him being a guest on other people's shows, and I've seen how reasonable he is. I've seen how he's able to comport himself and provide some quite insightful positions. I've seen him on Tucker Carlson, and he seemed like a reasonable person. I've seen him in other interviews; he made sense. But when it comes to his show, it's an entirely different thing. He's a totally different beast. He's like, of course, it's a show, so he wants to make it as interesting as possible, but it doesn't provide for a productive conversation because it's just noise and rage baiting. That's why he will bring people like Nick Fuentes on to rage bait. That's why he will bring people like Pearl Davis. That's why he will bring people like Andrew Tate, the lowest of the low of any society. That's why Piers Morgan will give them a platform because it's all about the clicks, it's all about the money, it's all about the controversy. It's not about having productive conversations. No, he doesn't debate, he rage baits, and he's getting a taste of his own medicine.
At some point, I need to finish a sentence.
Yeah. So now we're going to look at Peter Hitchens. Peter Hitchens, I'll call him Hitchens the Less. And this is a good segue from the previous conversation we just had, because a lot of these right wing, conservative kind of people, they always believe so much in the ability of the individual to do certain things. They overestimate the individual's capacity to do certain things. So Peter Hitchens reveals his very obvious ignorance on addiction when he was having a conversation with Matthew Perry. Matthew Perry, unfortunately, is late now. He dealt with addiction for most of his life. And Peter Hitchens was essentially telling him that it was his fault, that it was within his control, that if he wanted to stop drinking, he could literally just stop drinking, that people who are addicted, they're just lazy. It has nothing to do with any pathology of their mind. They're just lazy. They could literally just stop if they want to stop. And he wrote a book about it. And this interaction highlights how simplistic that worldview is. It just betrays his understanding of the human condition and the human mind, how complex human beings can be, and how diseases of the mind, just like diseases of the body, at times are beyond the control of the individual. So let's get into it.
I'm a drug addict. I'm a person that if I have a drink, I can't stop. And so it would be following your ideology that I'm choosing to do that. That I'm
Yes,
choosing.
That's exactly not my ideology, it is my belief. Yes, you do choose.
It is. And
You
it's,
have a
and it's a
choice.
belief that you wrote in your book. Correct?
You have a choice over
Would-
whether you drink or not. You have a choice over.
But
take
your
drugs
book
or
is
not.
the only book in modern times that has this ideology.
Yeah.
So doesn't that teach you something?
Well, quite often unfashionable ideas are unfashionable because they are unpopular with
Or wrong.
with influential people. Doesn't
So you're essentially thinking you're Galileo. You're the first to come up with this original idea that people who are addicted to substances, they're just addicted because they want to do it. Do you know what addiction means? It's oh my god, it's a psychological disease. Do you know what it means to be diseased? Do you know what a physical disease is? It's like saying someone who is hypertensive could simply stop being hypertensive. It's like saying someone who's diabetic could simply stop being diabetic. I'm sure there are things they can do to improve their outcomes, but it isn't necessarily a matter of will. There are some things, it's a pathology of the mind, addiction. When people, there are chemical processes involved in addiction. When you start using substances and you get addicted to it, there is a reward center in your brain that makes you crave for these substances. So for you to just say you can simply just stop, it's a matter of the will, makes absolutely no sense. It betrays everything we know about science, the science of addiction. It betrays everything we know about how substances work.
necessarily bother me. You tell me what the objective diagnosis is to establish the existence of addiction in the human body.
It's an obsession of your mind and an allergy of your body. So this is what happens to me. I start thinking about alcohol. I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about it.
And what's the objective physical proof of this inability to stop?
There's considerable proof this is partly a genetic
There's-
problem, isn't it?
Your
Allergy.
argument is that
Partly
it's
genetic.
willpower,
Of
Peter.
course, it's willpower. People,
No,
all the
it's not
people-
willpower.
look, people
No, no, no.
constantly stop.
Just because you are not suffering from an addiction doesn't mean people who are suffering from an addiction lack the willpower. People are different. People react differently to things. And I am sure there is something Hitchens himself is addicted to that he couldn't really just stop if he wanted to. It may not be as pathological as what Matthew Perry had, but there might be something, right? But he thinks that it's as easy as just pulling yourself up with your bootstraps. This is a bootstrap analogy. You can simply just stop. Matthew Perry is telling you, you know what? When I start thinking about alcohol, I can't stop. I'm obsessed with it. And the only thing I have control over is the first drink. Once I take that first drink, I've totally lost control and I'm just going to go on the bender. And this man, instead of having sympathy for his position to say, okay, how, considering this problem, how is society able to help this person? Because clearly there are certain things that are beyond his control. How is society able to help this person such that they do not engage in such repetitive disruptive behavior? That is way more productive than writing a book and telling someone that you could simply just stop being addicted. Have you seen people who are trying to get clean from substances? Have you seen the withdrawal symptoms that they have? Why do people get checked into rehab centers if you could simply just stop? This man is a fraud.
Both drinking and taking
But
drugs.
You're
If-
just,
if-
you're
if-
just,
if-
you're
if-
just
if
a
willpower were
person who's
not
talking
involved-
who's wrong.
If willpower were not
It's
involved, then how would that
effort of
happen?
will on your part not to do it now, isn't it?
I'm in control of the first drink.
Hmm.
And so I do all these things to protect myself from not having the first drink.
Sure.
But
That
once
has
I
always been
have
the
that
case, though.
drink, the allergy of the body kicks in. This is all documented alcoholism
Mm,
proof.
mm.
Then I can't stop after that.
Our problem with
Allergies of what?
Peter.
I mean, I'm
is he
allergic
doesn't
to
respect-
aspirin, but it doesn't.
Now, in the mind of Peter Hitchens, this man is just making excuses for his bad behavior. That's what he thinks. But that's not true. Now, we can say that there are all sorts of things that people do that gets them to the point where they get addicted to substances, right? That shouldn't be encouraged. People should know the dangers of being addicted to certain types of substances, right? So you should work on not getting yourself to that. What happens that you find yourself in that position? Simply telling the person to stop isn't productive, isn't going to work, because there are a whole lot of other things that are involved that might be beyond the person's control at this point in time.
I mean, I
No,
have,
but
I have to
Peter,
drink.
But you have to look at the evidence. Peter.
That is
I
it.
mean,
What is this? What is this? What is this allergy?
It's an allergy of your body.
It's just
Not that your aspirin point wasn't.
pseudoscience.
Not that your aspirin
It's
point
babble.
wasn't genius, but you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's just babbling. He's a babbling buffoon, a moron. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And like I said, this is the problem I have with this, pull yourself up by the bootstrap kind of analogy, the stoicism that Piers Morgan was talking about the other time. People are struggling. People are having issues and they need help. Needing help is a human thing. It doesn't make you less. Recognizing that you need help is actually good. It's productive. So you don't, man, it's so tiring to hear people who are supposed to be educated, people who are supposed to be enlightened, make these sorts of nonsense arguments, baseless arguments, simplistic arguments that they seem fine on the surface, but when you just dig a little bit underneath, you find that it has no foundation, it has no basis in objective fact and reality. Anyway, so this next conversation talks about the United States trying to reassess its relationship with Europe considering the immigration into Europe. So the US is scared that Europe is going to become majority non-European. So it wonders whether it is going to be able to continue its economic, political, military relationship with a Europe that is no longer European, in quotes. And there was a letter to that effect. So let's go into it.
It's insane. Who wrote this? Tommy Robinson? I mean, when I read it, I could not wrap my head around it.
Late last week, the Trump administration released the country's new national security strategy, which has sent a chill across Europe's political capitals. And the document takes aim at what it calls, quote, Europe's civilizational erasure. So they say, over the long term, it is more than plausible that within a few decades at the latest, certain NATO members will become majority non-European. As such, it is an open question whether they will view their place in the world or their alliance with the United States in the same way as those who signed the NATO Charter. So he's basically saying Europe might not be white enough to be a reliable ally. I mean,
so let's say Europe becomes majority non-European. What's the issue with that? I mean, if Trump was concerned about the values, if he was concerned about, what's the values of a non-majority European country, would they align with us? I can see some sense in that, right? But there is no evidence to suggest that just because Europe is becoming, quote and unquote, more non-European, that those values are going to change, right? That's a society of laws. That's a society of, freedom. That's a society of, there are processes and procedures in place. You can't just change things. This so-called civilization and erasure, I have no idea what he's talking about. But if you even look at the US, doesn't the US have more as a percentage of its population, more non-European people than Europe? Shouldn't it be Europe who should be concerned about the US? You see, that is why they are fighting tooth and nail to make the US as white as possible. That's why Trump is trying to deport as many brown people. He's trying to he's demonized almost every ethnic group, almost every immigrant group. But he hasn't done similar thing to immigrants from Europe. No, they're fine because they're white. White is right. White is okay. White is fine. That's what they're fighting for. They want to make America a white Christian nation, and they want to make Europe similarly. So they're concerned that Europe being non-white is going to be a problem. Look at the US itself. You literally genocided and murdered the indigenes of that place, and you made it European. You made it European at this point in time. You should not be, you do not have the morality. You don't have the moral. You're not in the moral space to even make this kind of judgment call. Because however terrible what's happening in Europe in terms of immigration, it is not as bad as what Europeans did when they immigrated to other places. They literally just wiped off the indigenous people. I mean, the immigrants coming to Europe right now aren't trying to kill off the native population. If at all, the only reason the Europeans are declining its population is because of their birth rates, not because they are being killed, not because they are being genocided. But that's what Europeans did to people when they went to the Americas, when they went to Australia, when they went to New Zealand, when they went to certain parts of Africa. That's what they did. So you're not in the position morally to even be making this sort of argument.
It's the only way you can interpret that.
It's a really bizarre document. It's incredibly strange. It's utterly absurd. Has any country ever published a national security strategy replete with white nationalism? It's insane. Who wrote this? Tommy Robinson? I mean, when I read it, I could not wrap my head around it. It was so bizarre. And I conclude exactly what you conclude, that the US is saying that it can only ally itself with white countries. I mean, that is the current position. But you're right, it puts European leaders in an incredibly difficult position. When a new US government comes in, it's if it's the Democrats, they're unlikely to continue with a policy like this. But we don't know if a Republican of Trump's ilk might come in the next time. And and also I think we have to bear in mind, and this is kind of crazy to realize, Donald Trump's only been in power for a year, not even a year. And he's proven that in that time he can do all sorts of damage, and he can make all sorts of significant changes that would take a long time to undo. We have another 3 years of Donald Trump.
We're going to look back in history at this time, at this point in history, and see this is exactly where the US fell off. This is an empire in its death throes. This is an empire in decline. And Donald Trump is accelerating that decline. The so-called American first people, when you look at the rhetoric, America first, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense on surface value. You should be very pro your country. You should be very patriotic. But America first is simply isolationism. How do you isolate America from the rest of the world? But given America's position, it literally makes no sense for America to be isolationist, except you want to accept that America is going to be less influential. It is good for the rest of the world for America to be less influential, to be less interventionist. But is it good for America itself? Not necessarily. So do these people actually know what they are calling for? An America that is less engaged with the rest of the world is a less powerful America. It's a better world anyway. So yeah, I'm not mad about this. I'm not mad about isolationist America. If you want to become a hermit, if you want to just, think only about America, let everything just revolve about America, good and fine. The rest of the world are going to be better for it. But on the long run, America is losing influence, they're losing power, they're losing, reach, they're losing so many things. And this just highlights how very short-sighted these MAGA morons are, or these people on the right. It just highlights how then they're unable to see beyond their immediate, you're able to see beyond a few years, a few months, a few hours away. They do not know the implication of these things. Anyway, to segue to Mehdi Hassan, right? Mehdi Hassan had a conversation which just highlights how he is a very good journalist. I mean, you have to be very careful when you're dealing with Mehdi Hassan, because dude is hella smart, and he's going to take your words and is going to use them as armor against you. So he had this conversation with a Christian theologian who essentially was arguing that European countries shouldn't be having guilt over slavery. It's an imaginary guilt. And Mehdi said, okay, good and fine. Guilt is an emotion, something that you feel, right? You feel that your ancestors did these things, you did not do them, so there is no reason why you should be guilty over them. Okay, good and fine. By that same logic, should you take pride in what your ancestors did? I mean, pride is also an emotion, right? And you can see this man struggling because he roped himself into a situation where he would not come out of. But let's get into it.
You could have written a book and said, I think that we did a great job ending slavery, which we did. But I don't know if this is just because it helps you become a bestseller, but you add this line, the tyranny of imaginary guilt. You're a Christian theologian, and you're saying we shouldn't feel guilty at all about 3 million Africans being taken out of their homes and moved to across the Atlantic? The guilt is imaginary? Why can't we have guilt and also believe everything you just said?
First of all, we can only feel guilt for something we did.
We did. We did take 3 million people out of Africa.
You and I didn't. No, you and I didn't. I can lament what some of our ancestors did. I can't feel guilty for it.
So that means
Yeah. So far, it's looking like he's making sense. How could you feel guilty for something that you didn't do? But it isn't so much the fact that you individually, specifically, should be feeling guilty for what your ancestors did. It is that your country, and you are a part of that country, you are a continuation of whatever the country did in the past. If the country was owing a debt, it was maybe Britain had borrowed $100 billion 100 years ago, and they haven't made that payment, even though the people who made that borrowing they're long gone. The debt is still, the country still owes that debt. They still need to pay it. You can't, a new government can't come into power and say, well, it was my predecessors who borrowed that money and they are long gone, so I'm not going to be responsible for making that payment. That's not how it works. So it isn't you feeling personally guilty, right? But the country itself. So this is where Mehdi takes it, makes it a turn for him.
So
Guilty.
hold on. So you're telling me with a straight face, you don't take pride in Britain in us defeating the Nazis in World War II? You've never taken pride in that?
Watch him squirm.
I take pride in it. I admire the fact of what
How can
my.
you take pride in it? It's not us.
But no, of course, I can't claim the credit for having done that because I didn't. My parents did. I
But
didn't.
we as British people take
right?
pride.
Only indirectly.
So
in
why can't we take
terms-
guilt indirectly?
In terms of guilt,
So you can see how you have to be very careful when you're making certain arguments. Guilt is an emotion, pride is an emotion, but you choose. You're choosing to ignore the terrible things that your ancestors did, right? You say, no, we cannot be associated with these terrible things, but we can be associated with the good things that they did, with the productive things that they did. Sorry, you can't have it that way. It's it's logically inconsistent, and you see him struggling.
because you cannot be guilty for something you didn't do. You can be.
And by that same metric, you cannot take pride in something you didn't do. If you cannot be guilty for something you didn't do, then why are you taking the glory? Oh, we defeated the Nazis. You probably weren't even born then, or maybe you were a kid. So how is it you?
Responsible for the effects. You can't be guilty for it.
But you can take pride in something you didn't do. But you can take pride in something you didn't do.
Metaphorically. So I prefer to talk. I prefer to use the word admiration now.
Yeah, you prefer to use the word admiration now, but you said pride earlier. So you've got to be careful with Mehdi. Mehdi is an absolute beast when it comes to debate. The guy is smart. The guy knows what he's talking about. When he has conversations, especially with these pro-Israel people, he absolutely dominates the conversation and it just dismantles everything. Every interaction with Mehdi Hassan, when I see it, I'm like, how is this guy able to think about these things so quick? Dude is very, 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 very smart, and I give him props for that. Anyway, these are the things that I wanted to talk about in today's stream. Being able to cover some of them. Piers Morgan getting the treatment that he mets out to people when they come to his stream, and concluding with Mehdi Hassan just absolutely wrecking this guy with logic. Anyway, like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in another live stream. It's bye for now.